Parents, what was the moment when you felt the most proud of your child? There was a snowy day. I was working still in my office. I went into the living room where my son was supposed to be playing video games and couldn't find him. I searched the house. Nowhere. I went out and found him playing in the snow. He was 5 or 6. I said, "Oh buddy, please don't go outside without telling me. And please buddy, wait for me to finish my work and I'll come out and shovel and then you can play." Then I looked closer and noticed he had his little shovel in his hands and was shoveling off part of the sidewalk, and he said, "But daddy, if I shovel now there will be less for you to do when you are finished work." Or he wanted to free time for you so you could play with him. My son stood up to a bully recently even though he knew the outcome. He got the crap kicked out of him, but after his defiance landed the bully in juvie, all the kids at his school started standing up for themselves more. Love that kid. I love your kid too. Not like that. Not my kids, my adopted grandkids. Refugees from a corrupt and violent third world nation. 1. The girl arrived with almost no English, very shy, and entered school mid-year. She won 3 medals by year end. 1 was for the most helpful and compassionate student. 2. The boy, older, was having trouble adjusting, got a first aid course as part of a keep him occupied plan. A month later he was at an Airbnb party that, of course, got out of hand. I had told him if trouble started he was to get the heck out and come home. Not only did he call the cab, he rounded up several other kids who also wanted out. That's not the proud moment. The host began seizing and puking from alcohol poisoning. My kid sent the other kids to wait, went back to administer first aid, called the ambulance, accompanied the patient to emergency, supplied all the necessary info, returned to the party, now crawling with cops, and brought all the waiting kids to our house to be safe. He's still having adjustment issues, but I knew from that moment that he was going to be okay. Your grandson sounds like an amazing young man. I got a call he was in a fight. Wife was out of town. I get there and find out he was sticking up for a kid being bullied. The kid was sitting alone minding his own business and a dickhead started up with him. My son tried talking then walking away. Didn't work. There was a kerfuffle. Zero tolerance policy, so he gets in school suspension. Even the VP was like, "We have no choice." I basically told my son that yeah, he's in trouble with the school, but you and me, we're good kid. Nice work. Other parents were another matter. Some people can't accept the fact that they raised an butthole. Exact demonstration of why zero tolerance policies are a bad idea. Me. Look at the stars. Sometimes you can play connect the dots with the stars and they make pictures. My 4-year-old daughter. They're called constellations. Dad. I haven't been a parent very long, only 5 years, but the proudest I felt is when she started reading. My kindergartner went into the school year only able to read her name and a couple sight words, A and the, which is normal. Around the holidays, she picked up a flyer sitting on our kitchen table and started reading it out loud. My wife and I shot each other a glance like, "Are you seeing this crap?" Pretty soon she read the whole thing. It was some Christmas party for kids, so nothing difficult. Then she did the cutest thing. She looked off in the distance and goes, "Huh, I can read," then put the flyer down and galloped out of the kitchen. My wife and I laughed and hugged and had a mini celebration. We just ran into her teacher last week at the store and she said, "Your daughter is reading at a level E now, which is about a year ahead of schedule. We're so frickin' proud of that little monkey." That's awesome. Just wait till she starts reading your texts and Reddit posts over your shoulder and asking questions about them. Or maybe she'll see this post and know how much you love her, which would be awesome. I'm a single dad. I raised him. My son just graduated high school and got accepted into college. I feel successful for the first time in my life. Oh. You may only feel successful now, but it's clear you've been successful far longer. My son is 8 years old. He's got a huge heart and he's so thoughtful. One day my wife had some nursing friends over to study for an exam and he set all kinds of snacks out for them. Then he went outside with an umbrella when he heard one of the girls was close to the house and just waited. When she arrived, he met her at her car and escorted her in. We never asked him to do that. Later around lunchtime I was upstairs watching TV and he brought his lunch up with 2 forks and wanted to share with me. It was his favorite kind of food too that he doesn't get to eat very often. I told him several times throughout the day how proud of him I am and what a good man he will become. I'm tearing up just typing this, lol. You should be very proud, but the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so I'd imagine you've set an amazing example for him to follow. My brother got married for the second time last year, and his new wife asked my 13-year-old daughter to be one of her bridesmaids. So I went with her, my brother, and his fiancé to the mall to find her a dress. When she stepped out of the dressing room, I couldn't believe it. This child who I diapered, dressed, sang to, read to, comforted, played games with, laughed with. She was a grown woman. I saw in her the woman she would become, and she was beautiful, and I held back some tears as I told her that she looked great. 15 minutes after we leave the store inside the mall, I'm relating this story to my brother and soon-to-be sis-in-law, and talking about how grown up she is, how it's all come and gone, she'll never be a kid again, and all that crap. My brother points behind us, about 100 yards down the mall concourse. My grown-up daughter is trying desperately to shove her 5 minutes and 11 seconds body into one of the quarter-operated carousel cars made for toddlers. You can only be young once, kiddo, but you can be immature forever. My son is 5 and my daughter is 3. They sleep in separate bedrooms next to each other. They used to share a room until recently, and have been adjusting. My daughter didn't want to go to bed and was whining a bit in her room. I was on my way to check on her and I saw my son sitting on the edge of her bed. He was holding her hand. He leaned down and hugged her and kissed her. He said, "I know you have to sleep alone now and you're scared, but I'm just right there. It will be morning soon," and he walked out. I was amazed at his compassion for her. Super proud. When I was a kid I had a couple of nightmares about spiders and would go to my parents' room. After the second night I got it into my head that I was annoying them and I went to my brother's room instead and woke him up. He turned on his lamp and got up, pulled out the mattress under his bed, and let me have his bed while he slept on the floor. He's had his problems, but he's a pretty good brother. I took my 15-year-old son to India. He's usually reserved and doesn't adapt well to change, so I was concerned about the culture shock. He stepped so far out of his own self and truly engaged himself in everything we were fortunate to experience there. It was truly watching a boy become a man and realize he is probably going to turn out to be a pretty cool man. As soon as they can do something better than I can. One son was able to fix my computer issues when he was in grade school. The other could beat me one-on-one basketball in middle school. Today they are both employed in jobs that I'm completely unqualified for, and I like that. When my daughter was little and we played cards, I would always play to win. Some parents let the kid win, but I think this teaches the wrong lesson. I remember the first time she beat me at cards. It was a great moment. Her graduation from law school was also memorable. A year later she bought me a car. I was talking to the parents of H's, my son, friend, and they asked me about the fight he had at school the previous week. What started it and whatnot. This was the first we had heard of it. So when I got home I asked H about the fight. Now, this was last year. He was 10. He said one of his friends was getting picked on, and when he finally stood up for himself, the two boys picking on his friend pushed him down and started hitting him. So H jumped in the middle and fought the two other boys so his friend could get away. He ended up being punched in the stomach and face a few times, but he said he felt like he needed to do something. It wasn't fair that there were two boys fighting his friend. He ended up getting 2 days of recess detention for fighting. By itself an anomaly in a zero-tolerance school, and extra homework. The school didn't contact us and he was afraid I'd be mad if he told me that he was fighting. Never been more proud of him. He took a beating for a smaller kid and then the punishment silently. Good on your kid for standing up for someone, but it's rather concerning the school didn't tell you about it. My daughter is 21, so there are many moments to be proud. She's in her 3rd year of college studying pre-vet and was on overnight duty in the horse barn watching a mare that was due to give birth any day. After a week of sleepless nights in the freezing barn, the mare finally gave birth while she was there, and because it was middle of the night she got to help the vet with the delivery. We spoke the next day and she showed me some videos. She seemed so capable and confident and happier than I'd seen her in years, and after some angsty teenage years I knew she'd grown out of all that and that she found her purpose and everything was going to be alright. I have tears in my eyes as I write this. Vet students are badasses. Last weekend I took my daughter, almost 9, to this Women in STEM thing at a local university, and there was this room where they built roller coasters out of foam tubes, toothpicks, tape, and marbles. I wanted to cry as I sat and watched her build her roller coaster. I helped when she asked, but otherwise I just watched her face as she silently worked through her design. She tried things. They didn't work. She made adjustments and changes to her design until it did what she wanted. It was just so amazing to watch her thinking and planning and executing this design. I was bursting with pride. He started self-feeding himself like a pro at 6 months. He's adventurous with his food and tells us he's done when he's full. He's 1.5 years old and so far we're noticing that he has a wonderful relationship with food and we're very proud of him for that. That's so fantastic, especially when you're recognizing that it's not always that way. I grew up with a bad relationship with food where my parents didn't let me eat meat again after spitting it out as a baby. It created a huge anxiety around good and bad food which still affects me as an adult. You'd be surprised how many social situations involve food. When my daughter finally said mum for the first time, she is severely autistic, has a global developmental delay and is nonverbal. I have hope she will talk more this year. My 14-year-old son was afraid his father was hurting me, never has, and came to my aid looking more scared than I have ever seen him but ready to battle his twice his size father. Really though, I had a cyst burst on my ovary and was moaning and crying while waiting for the pain meds to kick in. He earned some serious brownie points. I got him the new D&D book that week and he was super surprised he didn't have to earn it in some way. Wow, okay, this one got to me. Good kid, you got there. 2 kids, so 2 moments. 1. My daughter took my hand and led me into the playroom to play with some My Little Ponies. About 14 hours after major facial reconstruction, she was born with a severe cleft lip, right unilateral, which, at 2.5 years old, left her with almost an inch of space open in her face. After her second operation, her cleft was completely closed, her nose partially reconstructed, and she had spent 8 hours on an operating table. She was such a trooper. Her room at the hospital was right next to the playroom and she was determined to get some playtime in. Sitting next to her, after having seen her upper lip hole for the first time in her life, and watching her play on a playroom floor, I was incredibly proud of her for going through so much and still managing to be a kid, playing. 2. My oldest daughter loves to read books. When she was 5, she would have us read to her constantly. One day, she grabbed a new book from our new book pile, took me over to the couch and read the whole thing to me, without help. It was 10 pages and probably 26 words, but she did it all on her own. I think that was a proud moment for both of us. Since then, she's a voracious reader, now 7, and that's awesome too. A few nights ago, while my wife and I were putting our 2-1-2-year-old to bed, he told his first joke. We had just finished reading him a couple stories and singing his lullabies and he says, "Knock knock." We of course responded with "Who's there?" and he then replies with "Look at that fish," and bursts into hysterical laughter. It was really cute and funny at the same time, especially because we aren't big joke tellers ourselves. My daughter is 4 and her cousin is a few months older. Older cousin is mean to her all the time and takes her toys. I told her not to let him hit her and be mean to her. Well, older cousin threw a handful of sand in her face and knocked her down. My daughter stood up and punched him in the face and bloodied his nose. I couldn't even really discipline her for that. Sil was pee, but really, what is my daughter supposed to do? Let your son hit her? Nah. My dad first told me he was proud of me when I graduated from computer engineering. Thinking about that makes me cry because previous to that he was very firm about gender norms and what women can do. The fact the first time he expressed pride in me was when I did a man's thing is one of my favorite experiences. I love you, Dad, and your ability to open yourself to new things. Today, I had to go to our annual IEP meeting. This was the first one in high school. I hate them. I never know if I am making the right decisions for my son. My older children didn't have challenges like my youngest does. I don't like to hear about his struggles with executive processing. I don't want to talk about his disabilities. I wish I didn't know what a non-verbal learning disability was or what it means for my kid. Life is hard enough when your numbers come out facing in the right direction and you don't sometimes put your shoes on before your pants. When I walked into the conference room, I saw a box of tissues on the table and I thought to myself, I am not crying this year. It's okay. Big picture, none of this matters. He gets the help he needs to function in the world and I know he's as perfect a human as they come. We love him and we do everything we can to show him. You got this. We did the thing. Accommodations this. Supportive services that. Improvements in this area. Stable in that area. Still needs work over there. Okay. Fine. The group leader says. Do you have an extra minute? Of course. I have all the minutes when it comes to him. They went around the room and each told me a story about him. His math teacher broke her foot earlier in the year. He waited for her to pull up in the parking lot and carried her things into the building for her. Every day. Without ever being asked. He never said a word about this to me. His social studies teacher said she had a chance to stop by a wrestling meet. One of the wrestlers' headgear broke during a final adjustment before his match. She said, it didn't surprise her at all. My son took off his and ran it over to his teammate. His English teacher told me about how he sought out and consoled a classmate who lost a parent in a car accident. She, like his other teachers, did not know that my son lost his dad 6 years ago, so he knows that pain. I forget what 9th grade science is called, but that teacher talked about how he stood up to another kid's bully on his behalf when he was being picked on about his weight. None of them knew that he had his own struggles with that, and worked with an adolescent bariatric practice to drop his BMI a ridiculous amount of points, and at 15 is more than 25 pounds lighter and 7 inches taller than he was at 10. Which is why playing varsity football as a freshman was a phenomenal accomplishment, never mind qualifying for state sectionals in wrestling this year too. I cried with pure pride because this kid amazing. He had every reason to give up. His dad, his weight, his disabilities, but that's not how he rolls. Frick executive processing problems, dysgraphia and all that balls. My daughter, 5, plays some mean Plants vs Zombies. Also she has invented a sort of LARP version, where my wife and I play zombies and she lays down plants to shoot at us. She is thoroughly awesome. She's a serious athlete, and in 8th grade some little punk was giving her a hard time about having muscular shoulders. She told him in front of a whole class, maybe someday you'll hit puberty and you can get some muscles too. Savage. Went for my daughter's 1-year vaccinations today and she only cried for the littlest time. I was expecting a full meltdown as she got 4 shots. She even smiled at the nurses afterwards. My heart. 2 days ago, was at the grocery store with my 6-year-old daughter. As we turned the corner of an aisle, I saw an older gentleman, late 70s, who seemed to be trying to pick up a bunch of boxes from the floor. I suspect he has a bad knee because he was bending oddly and seemed to have a hard time. Well, before I had even processed what I was seeing, my 6-year-old rushed over to him, asked him if he would like some help, and then threw herself on hands and knees to pick up the boxes for him and put them back in their rightful places. She is a very special little person. Really big heart for such a little person. We moved to a new area in October of last year, so my daughter had to change kindergartens. She went in, made some new friends, was generally quite happy. Noticed one of her friends, let's call her A, had some kind of facial deformation. Didn't think anything of it. During the center's Christmas party, A's mum approached me and said that she always wanted to meet me. My daughter has been the best thing for A, who never had any friends and was bullied a lot. My daughter came in and on her first day turned to the kids who called A mole face and told them all off for being meanies and poo bums. Which, okay, I don't think is the best choice of words, but oh well. And throughout the few months she was there would continually cut off any mean remarks from the other kids with no one cares what you think and Answering for my mom because she loves to tell this story. My grandma was abusive and she and my mom weren't close. But my idiot father still invited over to meet me when I was 6 months old. Not seeing much choice, mom let her hold me and I screamed, "Bloody murder." Mom said it was the loudest and longest she had ever heard me scream. I was a very quiet baby. Mom took me back and I immediately stopped and smiled. Then idiot father handed me back to grandma dearest and I started screaming again. They tried this back and forth 3 more times before she got fed up and stormed out. Mom says it's the first time she was ever truly proud of me for something I did. And not just regular new parent I made this proud. My oldest has severe ADHD, but not a lot of behavioral problems at school. But when the show calls and the teacher identifies herself I still assume the worst. She was calling to tell me that my daughter is awesome. There is a kid in their class that everyone dislikes. He's mean, has a lot of behavioral problems, doesn't participate in class. But my girl goes out of her way every single day to say something nice to him or sit next to him during group projects. The day the teacher called, they were supposed to be in pairs talking about something they had read. My girl didn't pair up with her best friend. She went and sat with the mean kid. She talked to him the entire 10 minutes. This had happened before, but what was interesting about today was that the kid asked my daughter a couple questions. The entire school year so far, he had never willingly participated in group pair project. Her teacher gushed about how kind my girl is. She's always the first one to offer to help or go talk to someone that's alone. Felt like a parenting win. I raised a nice kid. I've always tried to teach her to be kind and modeled kindness and being helpful whenever I could. The biggest thing I want is to not raise buttholes. I hope I succeeded. When my son was in 3rd grade he had just gotten new shoes. Another child looked at him and said your shoes are weird. According to his older brother, he shot back your face is weird without missing a beat. I have a lovely son who kind of travels under the radar at school. Middle of the class kind of kid. Rarely gets in trouble. Never gets top of the class. But a really lovely boy. He loves science. And so do I. He quietly started to really expand his knowledge of it in his own time. Going way beyond what they were teaching in class. At his end of year exams when he was about 12, he came top in physics, chemistry and biology. All of the teachers were like, where the heck did that come from? He won a book on the periodic table. I'm crying now just thinking about it. Love you, Jack. My daughter is almost 4. Last summer we were at her best friend's house. Her best friend is a little boy, let's call him Jimmy. Jimmy is already a total bully at age 3. I think this is due in large part to the fact that his mother pushes him to be aggressive because she herself is very pushy and wants him to get his way regarding everything in life. Anyway, we're at their house on a summer day. The kids are running around and playing. At some point, Jimmy fills up a bucket full of cold water and announces that he wants to dump it on my daughter's head. She says no and he chases her around with the bucket full of cold water. She's fast and athletic. He's chubby and not athletic. So she gets away. Fast forward 30 minutes or so. She's playing in the sandbox and he sneaks up behind her and dumps the bucket full of cold water on her head. She stands up, turns around, picks up the bucket from the ground, looks him dead in the eye for a good 3 seconds without breaking her gaze and then throws the bucket right at his face. He cried. Of course I admonished her and told her we don't hit and apologize and all that jazz. But inside I was like, that's right girl, defend yourself. Don't take that bully's crap. My 2-year-old's favorite word is thank you. She is a very sweet and empathic and attentive kid, though she has her moments. And I have no idea what the heck I'm doing, so this definitely is all her. I was packing my daughter's lunch on a Tuesday, so that means going through the lunchbox and taking out the ice pack, snack bags, etc. I saw so many crumbs, so I called her over and asked what the heck happened. She said she smashed her Oreos and put the cookie crumbs on her peanut butter sandwich. It's so good. It's like the best peanut butter sandwich I've ever had. I'm so happy I won't have to pay for college. This kid is getting a full scholarship somewhere. When my son got his first girlfriend I had to pick her up for a date with him on my way home from work at the town library, so I asked him to describe her so I would know roughly who I was looking for. He said she was taller than him, wore glasses, had straight black hair, A blue backpack with a Squirtle Pokemon clipped on it. I couldn't find her when among all the other kids there, so I just started asking around. I finally found her and realized he left out one huge factor that would have made it easier. When I saw him I said, "Great description. It would have been a lot easier to find her if you mentioned she was black. We're super crazy white." His response was, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that." I just thought it was awesome that the fact that she was black was not something he even thought about when deciding he liked her. It's been almost 5 years. They're still together. True kid right there, leaving out little details lol. Also props to you for raising an awesome kid. When my special needs child was able to finally write her name, she 10 years old, the teacher actually called me to school for a surprise. I cried and cried. I went out that night with her and had it inked my body. This was almost 20 years ago. What a beautiful moment, and a beautiful tribute to that moment. My 3-year really wanted shoes with laces but didn't know how to tie them. We got her this toy to help her practice, thinking she would learn in a couple of weeks. Nope. She taught herself in the next 90 minutes. Just sat down and did it over and over again until she got it. We ended up having to go out and get her new shoes that night. He's 3 years old, been doing great with potty training. He poops on his own, with no pressure to try to use the potty, just dropped everything and then, well, dropped everything. I cheer him on. Positive reinforcement, you know, and he drops this gem. The poop was knocking at my butt door. It sure was, kid. It sure was. For Valentine's Day this year, my daughter's teacher does this with every class she's had, where she has the families write letters to the students. My husband and I love the idea. Instead classroom parties, she does this. So I contacted my essay teacher. You see, my son has high functioning ASD. He's in the same school as his sister but in a special classroom called essay. His teacher was all over it. She loved it. In 2 days we had his letter. My son gave it to me in secret and told me to keep it safe till it had to go to his sister. I read it in the bathroom and cried. I was so proud of him. He wrote how much he loved his sister, how he loved playing with her, going bowling with her, eating pizza and watching movies with her, how he loved how kind she is. I sent a text to his teacher and thanked her for her work with him. She texted me back and said it all came from him. Once he heard it for his sister. I'm now crying. When my teenage son walked over to my mom at her mom's funeral and just took her hand and stood beside her. As I typed that, I remembered he also took my hand during the service when I started to cry. He's a great kid. My 2-year-old is apparently super smart because she speaks in full sentences. We thought this was normal, but almost everyone we meet comments on it. Haha, I did that too and my parents just called it creepy. The proudest moment has been my kid putting me in my place, honestly. Her logic and ability to maintain calm while articulating her needs blows me away. I am very hopeful she will be a badass one day. Me. Hey, you need to socialize with others and be outside. Too much isolation is not healthy for you. Kid, I need my own time, mom. Me. Yes, I understand, but you've been alone for more than a day. Kid, do you understand that I'm with kids at school and at the after school club I interact with hundreds of kids a day. This happens Monday through Friday for the entire school year. This is my vacation and I need some time alone. Yes, this is literally how me and my preteen talk. Honestly, great job on you for also letting her speak her mind. She is doing it in a polite way, while getting her point across, and you also show her that her opinion is valued. I remember how my dad would go on an endless rant if I thought differently of something, and explaining my point would just not work. Having this confidence in her own words and opinions will help her out tremendously. After hearing about the earthquake in Haiti, my 6-year-old son asked to make a donation. I offered to donate for the whole family, but he wanted to use the allowance and gift money he had saved. A few months later, his school held a bake sale for a teacher whose infant had cancer. I gave him money for a cookie and some extra money to donate. He returned my money and used his own. Dang it, kid. Sure, you can donate your own money, but I want to donate some too. Monday morning, my middle child's IEP meeting. He has autism. Following a regression at 18 months, he had been essentially nonverbal until 2.53 years old. I had to quit my job because he couldn't be in a typical daycare. He was a runner, destructive, had major sensory issues and insane meltdowns. He's 4 now and fully verbal and an absolute joy. The happiest kid I've ever met. On Monday his special ed teacher told me he's ready to go to a general ed class next year. I can't believe how far he's come and I am so freaking proud of him. He's worked so hard. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.